This will transform the way you see who you really are. There's a moment in your life where everything you believe about yourself becomes a lie and everything you fear becomes the doorway. That moment might be happening right now, and you don't even know it. Before we go any further, welcome to Pure Stoic Practice, a channel created to help you grow, sharpen your mind, strengthen your character, and see yourself through a truer lens. If you're here because you want to rise, to understand yourself, to reclaim your inner power, or to break the patterns that have kept you stuck, you're in the right place. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me to continue learning, to stay connected, and to receive new lessons that help you develop yourself. Make sure to follow the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the latest videos. Your support truly fuels this work. The inner fire and the forgotten self. There is something inside you right now that you've forgotten how to name. A force, a presence, a fire that has never died, not once, not even in the moments you were convinced you had nothing left. It may have dimmed, it may have gone silent, but it never abandoned you. It waited. It watched. It smoldered beneath the parts of your life that broke you open, beneath the disappointments you carried alone, beneath every quiet night where you wondered if you had already seen the best of yourself. And if you sit still for just a moment, you can feel it. That subtle tightening in your chest, that quiet awareness that what you're living right now is not everything you're capable of, not even close. Because here's the truth you've avoided for years. The version of you that you think is who you are is just the surface, a thin layer shaped by old fears, old stories, the expectations of others, the habits you didn't choose but absorbed because you didn't know there were alternatives. You think you've reached the limits of your strength. You think you've mapped the edge of your potential. But you haven't. You've only traced the outline of what you were allowed to become. You've only lived the parts you thought were safe to express. Underneath that surface is a deeper self, older than your doubts, stronger than your failures, more honest than the voice that tells you to stay small. A self carved from every moment you got up when you didn't want to. Every time you held yourself together when the world around you was cracking. Every day you moved forward, without applause, without validation, without anyone even knowing how hard it was to take the next step. That self never left you. You left it. And now, for reasons you may not even fully understand, you're ready to return to it. There comes a moment in every person's life when something subtle but undeniable shifts. A thought, a realization, a quiet, internal click. It might come after a heartbreak. It might come after a failure. It might come after a long season of surviving instead of living. But when it comes, it wakes something ancient inside you. The part that knows you are made for more than doubt, more than hesitation, more than repeating the same old story about your limitations. The world has spent years teaching you how to shrink. It taught you how to doubt yourself before you even learned how to trust yourself. It taught you to value approval over authenticity, to seek permission instead of direction, to fear standing out more than you fear living a life misaligned with who you truly are. No one had to tell you directly. You learned by watching. Watching how people who were punished for being too bold, too loud, too different. Watching how others stayed silent to survive. Watching how dreams were quietly buried under responsibility, fear, and practicality. But here's the truth no one taught you. The fire inside you doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It becomes pressure, tension, restlessness. It becomes that ache you feel when you picture a life you want, but never move toward. It becomes the heaviness that sits on your chest when you pretend you're satisfied with the version of yourself the world accepts most easily. You have not run out of potential. You've only run out of excuses that let you pretend you're powerless. When you look back, you'll notice something remarkable. Every time life brought you to your knees, something inside you refused to stay down. You endured heartbreak that should have shattered you. You carried responsibilities you weren't ready for. You woke up on mornings when your heart felt too heavy to lift. You held yourself together through storms nobody else saw. And still, you are here. That isn't an accident. That's evidence. Evidence of resilience. Evidence of grit. Evidence of an inner strength you rarely acknowledge because you've been too busy surviving to stop and see what you've built inside yourself. Most of your strength was forged in silence, in private moments where no one clapped, no one noticed, no one came to rescue you. You saved yourself, piece by piece, moment by moment. And yet you tell yourself you're not strong enough, that you're not ready, that you're not capable. You've forgotten your own proof. Those forgotten moments, the days you didn't quit, the nights you didn't break, the mornings you found a way to keep going, those are the foundation of who you truly are. That is your real identity, not the doubt layered on top of it. And that is why this moment matters. Because right now, you're standing at the edge of remembering. You're beginning to sense that the fire you thought you lost wasn't lost at all. It was waiting for you to be tired of the smallness you were taught, waiting for you to stop negotiating with your fear, waiting for you to choose becoming over surviving. This is the moment where everything begins again. Not with noise, not with drama, not with some heroic transformation, but with one truth. Your power never left you. You simply stopped looking for it. Today, we start looking again. And what you find will change everything. If you feel this, if it resonates in a way you can't fully explain yet, take a moment now to subscribe to Pure Stoic Practice. It genuinely helps the channel grow and gives me the motivation to keep creating videos that support your journey. Let's step into this together. Your next chapter is already calling. The noise that covers your power. You weren't born doubting yourself. That hesitation you carry, that tightness in your chest when you want to speak up, that instinct to shrink even when your heart wants to rise, those things were taught to you, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. And the tragedy is that you learned them so well you began mistaking them for your personality. But doubt is not who you are. It's who you became when the world convinced you that being fully yourself was too risky. Think back to when you were younger, before shame, before comparison, before failure, taught you to protect yourself by lowering your expectations. There was a time when you acted without overanalyzing, when curiosity moved you faster than fear, when your voice lived closer to the surface. You spoke honestly, you tried boldly, you lived without carrying the weight of other people's judgments. That version of you existed because no one had yet convinced you to question your instincts. But reality came for you as it comes for all of us. Someone made a comment that stung more deeply than they realized. Someone told you to quiet down, to be realistic, to stop dreaming so big. Someone mocked your excitement, Someone dismissed your effort, and piece by piece, you began to adapt. Hesitation didn't arrive as a thunderclap. It arrived as a whisper. Tone it down. Don't draw attention. Don't take the risk. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't stand out. These ideas slipped into your mind, disguised as caution, as wisdom, as maturity. And over time, you internalized them so completely that they now speak with your voice. The world doesn't always break you with brutality. Sometimes it does it with subtlety, with a raised eyebrow, a sarcastic laugh, a moment of being ignored when you needed to be seen most. And without realizing it, you began to build your life around avoiding that pain again. You started editing yourself, choosing safer dreams, quieter truths, smaller steps. But none of that came from weakness. It came from survival. You adjusted because you didn't want to lose love or acceptance or belonging, and that makes sense. Human beings will do anything to avoid being cast out of the tribe, whether that tribe is a family, a classroom, a friend group, or a workplace. Your shrinking wasn't a failure, it was an adaptation. But an adaptation that no longer serves you. Because now, the world that once frightened you isn't the world you live in anymore. Now, the cage is internal. The voice that doubts you doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the beliefs you've carried forward unquestioned. Beliefs small enough to squeeze you into a version of yourself that doesn't match the size of your spirit. And then there's the comparison, one of the quietest and most damaging teachers of doubt. Without even meaning to, you began measuring your life next to people who appear effortlessly successful. You looked at polished images, curated achievements, perfectly timed wins, and compared them to your private struggles. You stacked your insecurities against someone else's highlight reel and decided you were behind, less capable, less worthy, less everything. But comparison is a distortion, a funhouse mirror that shows you a warped reflection. It blinds you to your progress, your patience, your courage, because it focuses only on what you lack, never on what you're building. And the irony is painful. The people you compare yourself to are often comparing themselves to someone else. No one is as confident as they appear. No one is as flawless as they seem. Everyone is fighting battles you can't see. Your doubt isn't a sign that you're incapable. It's a sign that you've absorbed too much noise. Noise from childhood, noise from society, noise from social media, noise from people who projected their fears onto you. When you're surrounded by that kind of noise long enough, it becomes internal. It becomes familiar. And familiar begins to feel like truth. But let me tell you something important. A thought doesn't become truth just because you've believed it for a long time. The mind is not a perfect narrator. It repeats what it has learned, even when what it learned was harmful, incomplete, or outdated. Most of the thoughts that cut you down are not original to you. They are inherited. You learned them by proximity, by repetition, by osmosis. The first step to reclaiming yourself is realizing you don't have to accept every thought that appears in your mind. You don't have to bow to every fear, obey every doubt, or trust every insecurity. You get to question them, challenge them, rewrite them. Your mind is not a courtroom where your doubts present evidence. It is a workshop, a place where beliefs can be shaped, reshaped, strengthened, or discarded. You are the observer of your thoughts, not the sum of them. You are the thinker, not the thinking. And when you understand that, you begin to separate your identity from your conditioning. You begin to see that your limits were taught, not discovered. That your hesitation was learned, not natural. That your insecurity was absorbed, not chosen. And the moment you see that clearly, doubt starts to lose its authority. It stops sounding like wisdom and starts sounding like an old echo, a leftover script from a life you no longer live. The noise that once drowned out your power begins to soften. The comparisons begin to feel irrelevant, and the self you thought you lost begins to rise, not because it returned, but because the noise that buried it finally quieted. This is the beginning of freedom. Not the loud, dramatic freedom of breaking chains in a single moment, but the quiet, steady freedom of realizing the cage was never locked, and that you, even now, hold the key. Reclaiming the mind, stoic strength, and mental discipline. There is a moment in everyone's life when they begin to sense that the chaos they feel inside isn't coming from a lack of strength, but from a lack of clarity, a moment where you become aware that the real battles aren't happening out in the world, they're unfolding in the space behind your eyes, in the rapid-fire thoughts you never question, in the interpretations you accept without examination. And once you notice that, you begin to understand that power isn't something you chase, it's something you reclaim. Most people spend their lives reacting to fears, reacting to expectations, reacting to discomfort, reacting to the internal noise that shouts so loudly they begin moving through life on autopilot. But beneath all of that noise is a quieter voice, a grounded voice, a version of you that isn't easily rattled. A version built on awareness instead of panic, intention instead of impulse, calm instead of reactivity. That deeper self is not a fantasy. It is the real you, the one that emerges whenever fear loosens its grip, whenever doubt becomes transparent, whenever clarity breaks through the fog. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They believed that the mind is the source of both suffering and peace, depending on how it is trained. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. He didn't mean you should suppress emotions or pretend to be unaffected by life. He meant that you are responsible for what you choose to internalize, for what you allow to take root inside you. He meant that your greatest strength lies in the space between what happens to you and what you decide it means. You reclaim your mind by reclaiming that space. But reclaiming it doesn't happen accidentally. It happens when you begin paying attention to the thoughts that drift through your mind like uninvited guests. It happens when you stop letting every fear, every worry, every assumption walk right in and take a seat. You start by noticing. Not judging, not fighting, not suppressing, just noticing. You start by creating a sliver of distance between the thought and the belief, between the belief and the reaction. And in that distance, clarity begins to form. One of the great misunderstandings about mental discipline is that it is about control. It's not. It's about awareness. It's about learning to see your mind as a landscape rather than a storm. It's about recognizing that thoughts are not commands and feelings are not dictators. They are signals, information, not verdicts. A disciplined mind isn't rigid. It's spacious. It has room for emotion without drowning in it, room for uncertainty without collapsing into fear, room for reflection before reaction. Your mind becomes strong not by becoming hard, but by becoming clear. And clarity begins with the courage to question your own narratives. Most of the beliefs that shape your daily reality were never chosen intentionally. They arrived through repetition, through habit, through cultural inheritance. They arrived through the stories you learned when you were too young to recognize that you were being taught anything at all. But a belief that entered your mind without your permission doesn't deserve unquestioned authority. Asking yourself, where did this belief come from, is not a sign of rebellion. It's a sign of awakening. When you start to examine the beliefs that shape your behavior, you begin to see how much of your life has been lived through borrowed lenses. You notice how often fear dresses itself as logic, how often old wounds masquerade as instincts, how often your mind predicts disaster simply because it has memorized the pattern of expecting the worst. You begin to understand that the mind does not always speak truth. It speaks familiarity, and familiarity is not the same as wisdom. A Stoic mind is a trained mind, not a perfect one. It is a mind that understands the difference between what is within your control and what isn't. It is a mind that resists the temptation to catastrophize. It is a mind that doesn't let external chaos dictate internal stability. And cultivating that kind of mind is not an overnight transformation. It is a daily practice, a choice, a discipline. Mental discipline looks like pausing before you respond. It looks like breathing deeply when your thoughts start spinning faster than your intuition. It looks like choosing interpretation over reaction, clarity over assumptions, presence over panic. It looks like journaling not to impress yourself, but to see yourself clearly, to catch the thoughts that hide beneath the surface. It looks like observing your emotions without letting them swallow you whole. This isn't a path of suppression, it's a path of mastery. And mastery doesn't mean emotionless. It means emotionally fluent, emotionally aware. It means that you understand your feelings without being controlled by them. It means you can hold fear in one hand and direction in the other. It means you can carry uncertainty without losing your center. You reclaim your mind by giving it structure, not rigidity. Structure, a sense of rhythm, a sense of intentionality. When you feed your mind with purpose, when you anchor it in practices that strengthen clarity, it starts to settle. It starts to trust you. It starts to release its grip on worst-case scenarios and open itself to new possibilities. Mental discipline becomes the quiet rhythm beneath your day, the steady internal posture that keeps you grounded when everything else becomes loud. And the deeper truth is this: when your mind becomes steady, life stops feeling like a storm you're trying to survive. It starts feeling like a terrain you're capable of navigating. You stop reacting. You start choosing. You stop letting external circumstances dictate your inner state. You start directing your own energy, your own focus, your own meaning. Nothing outside you gains power unless you hand it over, and nothing inside you weakens unless you stop tending to it. The clarity you seek is already within you. The discipline you admire is already forming. The calm you envy in others is already a possibility in your own mind. Your task is not to become someone new. It is to uncover the strength that was hidden beneath years of noise, distraction, and unexamined beliefs. Reclaim your mind, and you reclaim your life. The rest unfolds naturally. Fear, courage, and identity in action. There comes a point in your journey where reflection alone is no longer enough. Insight isn't enough. Understanding isn't enough. You can know everything about your fears, your patterns, your conditioning, and still feel trapped in the same loop of hesitation. Because the real shift doesn't happen in your thoughts. It happens in your actions. It happens the moment you stop waiting for courage to arrive fully formed and start moving while fear is still whispering in your ear. That is the edge between who you've been and who you are becoming. Fear has always been clever. It rarely appears as a scream. It shows up dressed as logic, telling you to wait for the perfect moment, to double-check the plan, to gather more information, to feel more prepared. It convinces you that stillness is safety, that hesitation is intelligence, that waiting is responsibility. But fear doesn't stop you by overwhelming you. It stops you by slowing you down just enough that you never cross the threshold into action. And here's the truth. Most people don't want to admit. Readiness is not a feeling. Readiness is a result. Readiness is something that emerges after movement, not before it. The people you admire, the ones who seem bold, decisive, grounded, they didn't take action because they were confident. They became confident because they took action. Every strong version of a person you have ever encountered was forged through a series of small steps taken long before certainty arrived. You grow into courage, you don't receive it. We like to imagine the transformation happens in heroic, cinematic moments. That one day, you'll wake up with a fire in your chest, your doubts dissolved, your path glowing clearly in front of you. But real growth doesn't feel like that. Real growth feels like shaking hands, like doubts at full volume, like fear sitting in the passenger seat while you grip the wheel anyway. Real growth is messy and unglamorous, and built from choices that rarely look impressive from the outside. Courage is quieter than you think. It's not the bold declaration shouted into the world. It's the quiet decision whispered to yourself. Not this time, not this version of me, not this smallness. Courage is saying yes to the next step, even when everything inside you begs for the familiarity of staying still. It is choosing direction over comfort. It is choosing possibility over the illusion of safety. It is choosing who you want to become over who you've been trained to remain. And every time you make that choice, even in the smallest ways, you begin rewriting your identity. Identity is not built from beliefs. It's built from evidence. Evidence you give yourself through action. When you show up for yourself, even for 5 minutes, even imperfectly, your mind registers that proof. It begins to adjust its understanding of who you are. You stop being the person who hesitates and start becoming the person who begins. You stop being the person who waits for permission and start becoming the person who authorizes their own steps. Identity changes not through intention, but through repetition. Through consistent, aligned action taken in moments where fear tries to convince you to freeze. And the irony is this: the action that transforms you are almost always invisible to others. The world celebrates big milestones, but identity is shaped in private. In early mornings, when you want to stay in bed. In late nights, when discipline is the only thing keeping you from quitting. In uncomfortable conversations you would rather avoid. In tiny decisions that seem insignificant but accumulate like rain. These small choices, repeated over and over, become the scaffolding of a new version of you. Discipline is the force that carries you through the moments motivation cannot touch. Anyone can act when they feel inspired. But discipline is what allows you to act when inspiration is nowhere to be found. It is the bridge between intention and identity. It's not punishment. It's not restriction. Discipline is devotion. Devotion to your future self. Devotion to the life you want to build. Devotion to the integrity of your own becoming. The truth is, fear will always be there. It doesn't disappear as you grow. It evolves. New levels bring new discomforts. But the more you act in spite of fear, the more familiar it becomes. And the more familiar it becomes, the less power it holds. Fear stops being a barrier and starts becoming a signal, a sign that you're stepping into a new territory, a new possibility, and a new layer of yourself. The presence of fear doesn't mean danger. It means expansion. It means you're touching the edge of your potential. The edge you've avoided is the edge you need most. And at that edge, something remarkable happens. You start to realize that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the will to move with fear beside you. You begin to trust yourself not because everything feels certain, but because you have evidence that you can act even when nothing feels guaranteed. You begin to carry yourself differently, not with arrogance, but with a quiet steadiness that no external validation could ever replace. That steadiness is called self-respect. Self-respect grows when your actions align with your values, when you follow through on your intentions, when you make promises to yourself and honor them, not because someone is watching, not because the world will reward you, but because you said you would. That kind of integrity is rare, and when you build it, you begin to walk through the world with a confidence that isn't loud, but undeniable. You become someone who doesn't chase worthiness, but embodies it. Someone who doesn't beg for certainty, but creates it. Someone who doesn't wait for life to grant permission, but takes responsibility for shaping their own path. Action is the birthplace of identity. Discipline is the backbone of transformation. And courage, the quiet, persistent kind, is the force that turns your potential into your reality. You are building yourself every time you act, even now, even afraid, even uncertain. The work is happening in the shadows, long before the world notices. One day, people will ask how you did it. They won't understand that it wasn't one grand moment, but 1,000 silent ones, each one a step into the life you were always meant to claim. Becoming, returning to your true self. There comes a time in your life when you realize that the journey you're on isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world dimmed your inner light. Not the childlike innocence or the simplicity of your younger years, but the clarity, the truth, the unfiltered sense of self that hasn't been touched by fear, comparison, or the weight of expectation. You begin to understand that the strongest version of you isn't ahead of you somewhere in the distance. It's underneath the layers you've accumulated, under the apologies you didn't need to make, the compromises that cost you pieces of your soul, the stories you accepted without questioning. You are not starting over. You are returning. And that return is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It begins quietly, in the moments when you choose honesty over performance, alignment over approval, small, courageous truths over convenient silence. You start noticing that the person you want to be isn't a fantasy. It's someone you've been glimpsing in your best moments for years, when you stood firm for what mattered, when you treated someone kindly despite your own pain, when you listened to your inner voice, even when it didn't match what everyone else wanted. Those flashes weren't accidents. They were signposts pointing you back to yourself. The world teaches you that becoming yourself is about reinventing, upgrading, optimizing, as if your worth increases only when you become more impressive. But what if becoming is not about adding anything? What if it's about subtracting, removing the stories that never belonged to you, removing the shame you inherited rather than deserved, removing the fear that was passed to you through generations of unhealed people, removing the pressure to prove your value in metrics that don't speak the language of your soul? You cannot rise into the life meant for you while carrying identities that were never yours. This is the moment when you begin to see that your strength has always been quiet, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that endures. The strength that helped you get up on mornings when your heart felt heavy. The strength that pushed you toward growth even when you were scared. The strength that carried you through storms no one knew you were walking through. That strength hasn't disappeared. It has simply been buried beneath years of rushing, pleasing, doubting, and performing. But as you peel back those layers, something shifts. You start to size the difference between who you are and who you've been pretending to be. You start to recognize that the real you is softer but stronger, quieter but more certain, less polished but more honest. And in that realization, you feel a spark of peace that you haven't felt in a long time. A peace that comes from being internally aligned instead of externally approved. Becoming yourself is not a single leap. It is a steady unfolding, a process of remembering, reclaiming, and realigning. You remember the truths you once silenced. You reclaim the parts of you that were tucked away because they didn't fit someone else's idea of who you should be. You realign your choices with your values, your time with your priorities, your mind with your heart. And slowly, your inner world becomes a place you trust again. That trust is what changes everything. Because once you trust yourself, your voice, your instincts, your direction, you stop looking outward for validation. You stop waiting for permission. You stop fearing other people's judgments. You start moving through the world with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be announced or defended. You become grounded in your own truth, and that grounding is what allows transformation to last. The life you want doesn't require a different version of you. It requires a truer version of you, a version that no longer dilutes itself to be digestible, a version that no longer apologizes for wanting more, a version that no longer pretends to be smaller so others can feel comfortable, a version that shows up fully, even if some people don't understand, even if some people are intimidated, even if some people drift away. You are not responsible for shrinking to fit the spaces you've outgrown. You are responsible for expanding into the person you were always capable of being. Along this process of returning, something else happens too. You begin to see the beauty in your slow progress, because progress measured in honesty and alignment is far more transformative than progress measured in applause. You start valuing the days where you stayed true to yourself over the days where you pleased everyone else. You start realizing that the version of you you admire isn't defined by perfection, but by consistency, a pattern of small, sincere choices that add up over time. And that is where becoming turns into being. When you choose the aligned action again and again, something inside you shifts. Identity and action merge. The person you wanted to be becomes the person you naturally are. The habits you struggle to maintain become your default rhythm. The confidence you once chased becomes part of your spine. This is the moment where you stop trying to prove yourself and simply live from a place of internal truth. As we move deeper into this journey, I want to pause for a moment to thank you for being here, for listening, for showing up for yourself. If this message resonates, if it helps you reconnect with who you truly are, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Your support genuinely helps Pure Stoic Practice grow, and your reflections help shape future videos. Thank you for being part of this space. Becoming is not a destination. It's a returning to the voice you drowned out, a returning to the fire you thought had gone out, a returning to the self that has been waiting patiently beneath all your doubts. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming, steadily, quietly, beautifully. And your future self will look back on this season with gratitude, not because it was effortless, but because it was the moment you stopped running from yourself and began walking toward the truth of who you already are.